Video game movies have had a bit of a bad rap, and I never really understood why. The Bob Hoskins Mario Brothers movie was awesome in my opinion. I watched it as a kid and I still enjoy it today. I don't get why everyone was so angry at it. It was a cool combination of fantasy and 80s punk that mixed together into a loony adventure that reflects the kookiness of the original platformer. I mean, think about it. You've got a tiny guy who grows on shrooms, dresses like a furry, jumps ludicrously high, and lands on bizarre turtle and mushroom monsters. Of course you'd get a ridiculous world. I love the 1993 Mario Brothers movie. Now, don't get me wrong, I went to see the new movie a few weeks ago and enjoyed it just fine. I like them both. And yet, video game movies have often been snarked at. People carry on about the bad Resident Evil movies all the time. I don't find anything wrong with them. The only one I don't really enjoy so much was Final Fantasy Spirits Within. And even then, I still think it's perfectly fine. A post-apocalyptic world fraught with monsters, being done to death. But at least Spirits Within did a good job, and it was a coherent story. Final Fantasy Advent Children was cool, but the story made zero sense even if you played FF7, and yet you all loved that movie so bloody much. Anyway, the new Mario Brothers movie did really well, and now there's talk of a potential Legend of Zelda movie. I always fantasized about making a Zelda movie, as have many other people. There's tons of fan films and April Fool's jokes as well, and some of them are pretty well done. But now that video game movies seem to be losing their tarnish, it would be interesting to see what Illumination does with it. Personally, I'd prefer a live-action one in the vein of Lord of the Rings. If it's done properly and not woke. Nintendo will do a good job making sure that doesn't happen. Here's the thing though, how do you translate Legend of Zelda to the screen? Much of the charm is the puzzle solving and exploration. How do you translate that into a medium where the audience is a spectator instead of a participant? And don't say 4D. Breath of the Wild worked, as I've said in earlier videos, because it put the player and the main character in the same position. Neither knew anything about the world they were to face, and both had to explore the world together. How do you do that in a movie? The Lord of the Rings doesn't even do this. It can't. Frodo already knows about the world and is integrated into it. You'd have to do it another way. I was thinking about the various ways to do this and had another epiphany. There already is a Legend of Zelda movie. And I'm not talking a fan film. I'm talking an actual theatrically released movie. It's live action, has a blonde swordsman who saves a princess from a castle beset by an evil man who seeks to usurp power and throw the world into chaos. In order to do this, the swordsman has to solve problems, use his wit to develop cunning strategies against villains, and storm the castle. He overcomes trials related to courage, wisdom, and power, suffers a terrible setback, and gathers allies in his quest to free his dearest love. What movie is this, you ask? The Princess Bride. Don't laugh. This is the perfect Legend of Zelda movie. Think about it. Fantasy setting? Check. Magic and monsters? Check. Sword fighting and giants? Check. Evil king? Check. Princess and the swordsman who loves her? Check. It's all there. Hell, the hero character is a blonde silent type. How much more bloody Zelda could you possibly get?
I've always been a quick eater.
Now you could argue that any high fantasy movie could pass as a Zelda movie, since Zelda is a high fantasy story with all the tropes therein. Almost every game goes through the same beats. A knight fights monsters, gains a magic sword, storms a castle, frees the princess, and lives happily ever after. Not just Zelda, the original Star Wars movie follows the same process. So, by that argument, you could say every high fantasy hero's journey is a Zelda game, right? No. Princess Bride is very different. Let's look at the film itself. It starts with Wesley, the silent blonde boy on a farm. Now where have we seen this before? There's Buttercup, the haughty, spoilt girl who treats him badly. How about that? Then, simply through his actions and looks, Buttercup changes her attitude and falls for Wesley. But our hero must go on his journey to earn the right to his true love. He suffers a terrible setback that causes him to disappear for many years. And his true love is whisked away to a castle by Prince Humperdinck, a charismatic yet power-hungry warmonger. Buttercup is beset by misery around the man she doesn't love and doesn't even like, and is kidnapped by fiends intent on killing her. That's when, spoiler alert, Wesley, is unleashed and ready to win back Buttercup's broken heart. Now here's where it gets important, so remember, he fights against Inigo Montoya in a masterful sword fight, the best sword fight in cinematic history, bar none. Seriously, not even Darth Maul comes close. Then he battles the giant Fessick in hand-to-hand combat. Then he outthinks the shrewd and evil Vizzini in a battle of wits, before leading his dearest love through the dark dungeon of the Fire Swamp. And yet, even after passing those trials, he's still overcome by Prince Humperdinck. He suffers in the pit of despair, even being driven to death. But his allies save him with a magic shrine of resurrection. Spirit orb. Miracle pill. Then he uses his intellect and skill, and allies, to storm the castle and free Buttercup and defeat the evil warmongering Dark Lord Ganondorf. Prince Humperdinck, and ride to freedom, and they live happily ever after. It's these specific themes that make Princess Bride a Zelda movie. The trials that Wesley goes through. The duel with Inigo Montoya? That's a test of courage. The fisticuffs with Fessick is a test of power. And Vizzini's battle of wits is a test of wisdom. And the Fire Swamp is a test of all three at once. That makes this a Zelda movie, because the elements of the Triforce are all represented in the trials that Wesley must overcome, as Link does. He does it stoically and sternly, with all the courage, wisdom, and power of a true hero. He goes as far as to dive for his true love. Even after coming back from the dead, he remains focused, just like Link. Forget the hair colour, look at their sheer stoicism. It's not just the hero, look at the villain. The key feature of Zelda villains is their imbalance of the Triforce virtues. Ganondorf values power. That imbalance divides the Triforce and leads to the main conflict of the series. Vati from the Minish Cap lusts for power also. The Skull Kid lacks courage, wisdom, and power. He only obtains power from Majora's Mask, and it destroys him. Prince Humperdinck and Count Rugen, taken as a single entity, amount to a Zelda villain in the same vein. They lust not only for power, but war. Humperdinck is deceitful and cowardly, while Rugen is sadistic and callous. They're both smart, to be sure, but hardly wise. Humperdinck's intelligence stems only from his cowardice and fear of death.
I always think everything could be a trap, which is why I'm still alive.
His desire for power and war stems, in my opinion, also from his cowardice. In my experience, people who know they are cowards will seek some way to bolster themselves, make themselves greater, to boost their confidence. That's Prince Humperdinck. He wants war to show he is a strong man. He wants power to protect himself from death, and he became intelligent to flee from death. He resembles the Skull Kid more than Ganondorf, hiding his fear behind a mask. Rugen's intelligence stems from his sadism. He's by no means a coward, but is sneaky and unsportsmanly. He builds machines to suck people's life away, simply for posterity.
And remember, this is for posterity, so be honest. How do you feel? Interesting.
He's a more ruthless force, calculating only in his malice. He resembles Calamity Ganon, existing only for the pain of others. Of course, you may disagree that they are the same. Humperdinck doesn't fight to the death, but is rather beaten with a bluff from an immobilized Wesley. You could say this makes him less like Ganondorf, who's always beaten by the sword. But if you take him and Count Rugen together as a single entity, they are defeated as Ganondorf always is. First, with wit and cunning, second, with brute force. I love Princess Bride. It ranks up there, beyond Star Wars and Avengers, as a true masterpiece. And it is a Legend of Zelda movie in a fundamental sense. Not just for the trials of power, wisdom, and courage that Wesley must endure to win back Zelda, I mean Buttercup. There's also the use of the main character. Yes, you heard that correctly. Remember earlier I asked, how do you translate Zelda into a medium where the audience is a spectator instead of a participant? You need to put the audience in the same boat as the main character. Breath of the Wild does this brilliantly with Link's amnesia, and Princess Bride does it with the main character. You might ask how the movie does this with Wesley. Wesley is the hero of the movie, sure, but he is not the main character. The kid is. The kid doesn't know this world any more than the audience does. The audience forms a quick and simple connection to the kid because he's chucking a sickie and gets a visit from his granddad. We can relate to that kind of thing, getting an embarrassing visit from our boomer ancestor and his old school ways of showing affection.
Don't pinch my cheek. I hate that.
Now that we have a bond with our companion, we begin exploring. Through the grandfather's narration of the story and their back and forth, we are taken with the kid on this journey through the country of Hyrule. Florin. This creates a psychological connection with the story and the characters therein, exposing us to the fundamental themes of, and I will say it again, power, wisdom, courage, and the balance thereof that makes a true hero. And the kid has a great story arc to him. At the start, he dislikes his granddad. Through this kissing book his grandfather reads to him, he forms a link in a multi-generational bond going back to his great-grandfather.
It was the book my father used to read to me when I was sick, and I used to read it to your father. And today I'm going to read it to you.
And by the end of the movie, he's keen to see his grandfather again. This not only corresponds to the multi-generational theme of The Legend of Zelda, but is a transformational story in and of itself, which sums up every Legend of Zelda game. If Illumination makes a Zelda movie, I think it will be a massive misstep. They can do some nice, heartwarming movies like Despicable Me, but The Legend of Zelda requires an entirely different approach. It can't be CGI unless they want to do it Advent Children style, but if they did that, they might as well do live action. They'd be tempted to invoke Peter Jackson or something. But even still, The Legend of Zelda requires a much more sophisticated approach to the storytelling than Lord of the Rings. Tolkien told his story as a mythological epic. That works for stories meant to be told and shown. But The Legend of Zelda is one that has to be experienced, which only really works in a game, or in an incredibly awesome movie starring Carrie Elwes. A Legend of Zelda movie will not succeed with visual effects or good casting, but with immersive storytelling. It must include the themes of power, wisdom, and courage, using effective narrative techniques that make the audience experience those themes on a psychological level. Only then will they be able to walk away feeling transformed. Only then can the audience come away from the world of Hyrule feeling as if they have learnt something about themselves, even if they don't know what they learnt. Because that's what a Zelda game does to you, and it's what The Princess Bride does to you. Princess Bride and The Legend of Zelda have endured this long, in my opinion, for these reasons. They share the themes of balanced virtues, overcoming imperfection and foibles, combining with your counterpart to complete your shortcomings, and triumphing over those unbalanced chaotic forces. And with each playthrough or viewing, you come away with another piece of the jigsaw, another lesson learned, another treasure uncovered. After making this video, I've decided we don't need a Legend of Zelda movie. We don't need another over-CGI'd cinematic theme park ride. We don't need another Lord of the Rings knockoff, and we don't need to give bad writers and bad actors a chance to screw up yet another beloved mythos with woke quackery. The Princess Bride is a perfect Legend of Zelda movie. We won't get any better. And I'm surprised to admit it, but I can accept that. G'day, thanks for watching. I hope you really enjoyed that. Please share, like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Let me know what you think. And check out my locals page where you can find all my audiobooks for $2 a month. And I'll see you in the next video.